In your darkest nightmare hour.
Zelda?
You know this?
Well,
Cut bombs
You.
into
A whole month.
Zelda?
CD.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Die.
It's CDI month!
Oh boy!
I'm so hungry I could eat an Octorok.
Yeah, so as you can tell, probably, it's CDI month, and what that entails, it's a whole month full of CDI stuff
Yay!
from Zelda universe. And why would we ever do such a thing?
Because
Is it because you're bad people?
Well, partly, but
Well,
there's...
I can tell you what people... this actually isn't the first time that we've done CDI month, and maybe we can explain it more in just a moment, but to give you an idea of what other Zelda fans thought of CDI month last year, we had comments such as this: "What is wrong with you people? Even Nintendo doesn't consider them Zelda games. You people are monsters." So that's just to give you a little introduction to CDI month.
Yeah, that's a good introduction.
So later I will
yeah.
tell you what people were saying at the end of the last CDI month, but why don't we quickly explain what it's actually about?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's basically a month that we dedicate to the 3 Zelda titles that were made by Philips
What?
and released on the...
You mean you
Yeah.
mean made by Nintendo, right?
No, actually not made by Nintendo at all.
A Zelda game
so-
not made by Nintendo?
3 Zelda games, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so... but no, look, here is the thing about CDI. They're pretty great. That's what you need to know about it. I don't know what... You know, basically,
Yeah, or not.
it's a great set of cutscenes followed by a abysmal gaming experience.
And that's why
yeah.
we're
Oh.
celebrating them.
Right, and when I
Yeah,
say great
it's-
cutscenes, they're also abysmal, but they're funny. The whole
yeah,
thing
it's
is
one
bad.
of those...
Everything about
it's
it
one
is
of those
bad.
things that... Yeah, it's one of those things where it's so bad it's good,
Yeah.
but sad also.
It's hilarious.
These games, as bad as they were considered some of the best on the CDI, a system which is not only pretty broken and hard to find and way too expensive, but so are the games. So we haven't, a bit of a disclaimer, none of us have actually played the games, we've just seen other people play it. You've seen videos, reviews, all this kind of thing.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
it's you know how people sometimes say, "Oh, well, you haven't played the game, so how can you say if it's any bad?" Okay, go play the CDI games. I dare you.
Yeah.
I've never heard someone say that. How can you say if it's any bad?
So
But we
each and every day on Zelda Universe, we're gonna have at least one something CDI related.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Pretty
as
good.
much as a lot of people may want to pretend that these games do not exist, they are a part of Zelda's dark, hidden history. And as Zelda fans, we think it's fun to take apart the series and explore it from every angle, even Philips.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like
Especially Philips.
when I talk about Sonic, I usually talk about the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis Sonic
Yeah.
games. But you can't really talk about Sonic without talking about like Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Sonic 06.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a better game than Zelda CDI, to be fair. It's like a 2 out of 10. Like,
I guess, yeah, something like that.
you know, so it's up there. You know, if it was
Yeah.
on the CDI, everyone would be like, "Whoa, check out this game. This is even better than that really, really bad game that's better than the other really, really bad games on this system." If you don't know much about it, we do. There is a famous set of reviews from the Angry Video Game Nerd, if you're not afraid of bad language, that you should probably check out. And we've got a bunch of stuff on the site. We'll probably put it in the description of the video. Just some introductory stuff, like the opening cutscenes, because those are super important. If you want to understand what's going on here, you're going to need to know the opening cutscenes of these games because they're basically everything about it.
Yep. If you haven't seen them, you're missing out.
Yeah, and they're also, if we talk about what the CDI games are today, you know, most old Zelda games, they're not around as in, like, they're not newly released and people aren't playing them as much. Like, the original Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, like, they're around, but they're not big things.
Yeah, they're on the
nowadays.
virtual console, but not many people are playing them.
Right. And what the CDI games are, they are the cutscenes at this point. Like, that's what they are.
Yep.
And you'll see them in forms of YouTube poops, and you'll see them as memes. You'll eventually see, you know, you see them being referenced, or you can see a cosplayer dressing up as the king.
Yeah.
Or...
I mean, you've probably seen parts of CDI Zelda, even if you've never heard of the game. The cutscenes are at meme status at this point, so you've probably seen some YouTube clips of them just out of context. You know, there's this one. There's sort of the Zelda cartoon was a little bit infamous too, but it was a decent cartoon for a children's Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, it wasn't good, but it wasn't horrible.
Yeah, but then I feel
it was mediocre.
The people who did the cutscenes for the CDI games actually used the cartoon as inspiration more than the original NES games.
Yeah.
And I feel like they took the worst parts of the cartoon and thought, this is awesome! And put it into the cutscenes.
Because, so that's the thing. So the CDI games are why... they're the reason a lot of people give about not giving Link a personality. Because in the cartoons and then in the CDI games, the only two ones where they give him, you know, like a voice and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not, you know, he's had a voice since Ocarina of Time to say "here," but in terms of actually saying sentences, they messed it up completely because he's just really obnoxious.
I mean,
both in the cartoons and in CDI.
All he lives for is food and wanting a kiss from Zelda.
Yeah, but I will say this though: in the cartoon, he was obnoxious, and he was barely likable in the cartoons.
Yeah,
I
was
think.
so excited to see Zelda as a cartoon when I was a little girl, and then when I saw Link's personality, I thought, this is not how I imagined the hero of Hyrule.
Right, he's more of a... I mean, he's a bit of a jerk, and he's just there because they really need to have a hero. You know, if they didn't have this need, he would be out on the street.
And also because
so
Ganon is so incompetent that, I mean, as weird and obnoxious as Link is, he can defend Hyrule from him.
Yeah, but in the CDI games, it's nobody really has a personality at all,
except the king.
Yeah, the king.
Well, we've made personalities for all of them, but
nobody has a personality. It's more like, oh no, you know, Gamelon is under attack by the evil forces of Ganon. Link must go, you save them. And it's like, I want a kiss. As over the top as their emotions and the voice, and as bad as it is, there's no personality to any of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah, but do you think that was limited by the technology at the time? I mean, there was no personality to the characters in, you know, the original Legend of Zelda either.
Yeah, but they weren't attempting to have
That's true.
Yeah, I think it's not... I mean, because, yeah, they're badly drawn cartoons, basically, the CGI cutscenes.
Mm.
But even badly drawn cartoons, they could have managed to make something interesting out of it. But it's just the thing that it's so short and it's so rushed, in a sense, that, I mean, they're just sitting around and it's like, gee, it sure is boring around here. And then one comes in and is like, oh, now you have to go. Oh, gee, great. And then you go, and then that's it. And it's like, well, okay.
So in terms of CDI month, what are people what should people be expecting to see?
All sorts of things. You'll see everything from deep, very emotional and wise articles. You will see posts about possibly cosplaying or art. You will see videos such as this, where we actually, we discuss this CDI games on a podcast.
Yep.
Yep.
And who knows what other surprises you might encounter.
Well, talking
along
about
the path.
videos, I think you could probably expect to see some of our favourite hoops.
Yeah.
That probably needs a bit more explanation.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the CDI games are infamous for YouTube poop, especially the Zelda games. So there's some really clever ones out there. There's some really bad ones too, but we'll probably be sharing some of the ones we really
the
like.
YouTube poop started out by just playing these awkward clips, like repeating them or going backwards and just, making a really
Remixing them.
poop video. I mean, it's just my boy, my boy, my boy. Like those were the original YouTube poops, and therefore that was the name, because there was no quality to these videos.
Yeah.
Just like the CDI game.
But as time went on, people started putting a bit more effort into their poops.
Yeah, and coming up with stories for them, and editing the voices and making new voice clips from the existing ones and things like that.
So we'll share some of our favorite ones, and they're awkward and they're weird and really funny. Most of the content you would find on Zelda Universe will be CDI-ified.
Yep.
How do you like that word?
And I guess one thing I can add is that I would say we're not taking this very seriously. A lot of people last year basically, said we were monsters and horrible people because they thought we were very serious about the CDI games, but we're just having fun with them at the end of the day. So we'll have some posts that are serious, we'll have some that are silly and light-hearted, but yeah, it's just for fun.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about something that Cody touched upon briefly before, and that is that the CDI games are being... This is one of the things that the CDI games, an unfair criticism, sort of, that involves the CDI games, and that is that when you talk about things like playable Zelda or voice acting or giving the Legend of Zelda franchise to another developer, people always say no, and then they point to the CDI games as an example. I mean, like, what, you want Link to have a voice? How can you want that? Look at what happened with CDI. Or you want to give, like, Zelda to another developer? You can't do that. Look what happened with CDI. It's sort of the scapegoat for anything that's bad. I mean,
but the thing
you
is,
might as well say, you want to have realistic graphics? CDI can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where people have their own prejudices from the start, and then they'll do whatever it takes. Like, no matter what you say to some people, they're not going to want a voice acting or this kind of thing, or they're just going to say it will ruin it if you change it.
So would you say that the CDI games are being unfairly blamed?
Well, I mean, they're really bad. They're just being... They're bad in all those respects. It's just that it's a silly argument, just because obviously Nintendo's not going to do that.
Right.
Like they have, done a bunch of these things before with different series. Like you say, oh, well, voice acting, we don't want it to be silly like CDI. It's like, it's not hard to be less silly than CDI voice acting.
And there are good examples of Nintendo. Well, Retro Studios did great voice acting with Metroid Prime 3, and Samus did not talk, and that worked out amazingly. So there are good examples, but there are also bad ones.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Games.
And I mean, CDI games are nearly 20 years old now, so... And obviously, I mean, we know that Nintendo pretends they don't exist, so I'm sure that if they were to try voice acting or something different, they would be trying their hardest to avoid doing what they did with CDI.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, just in terms of all those arguments, giving it out to another developer has developed at least 3 of the better Zelda games in the series. Talking, of course, about Capcom, the Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, and the Minish Cap.
Yep.
So none of this is new, but people don't really care. They just got their they're just clinging to the past. I'm calling you out.
And we'll see what happens with Hyrule Warriors to see if that's going to be a CDI level of bad. Probably not.
Because
I don't think so.
No, it's not going to be a CDI level of bad. From what I can tell from Dynasty Warriors is that it might be aggressively average. Is probably the best way to describe it, because a lot of people just feel like Dynasty Warriors it doesn't really have much point. It's just endless hacking and slash, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it'll probably work for some people and not work for others. It's not going to be a Zelda game in any real sense apart from featuring Zelda characters and Zelda items.
That's right. We have to remember that this isn't the next title in the Zelda series. It's a spin-off.
Yeah,
Right.
but I do think that if it was to fail pretty badly, people are gonna say, well, see, look, Nintendo tried and they handed it to another developer and they failed, just like Philips did.
Well, they're wrong. They don't understand how things work. See, much how like we here at Zelda Universe love to feature CDI just to annoy people and get them riled up. That's the same reason I appear on this podcast. Just because there's a few people who just keep saying in the comments, "Get Cody out of the podcast," and I'm like, I need to come back next week.
So you should start saying that you love Cody and you want to see him every week, and then maybe he'll go away.
Oh no, it burns. Not the praise. Not into the pit.
Yeah. So I will say this. I want to ask you, the two of you, if I mean, you don't have the CDI games, but if you did, would you try to play them all the way through, or would you just, let's see how it goes for...
I would really like to. I'd definitely try them just for morbid curiosity. I mean, I've spent years and years
Of course. I think everyone...
That's true.
And I think everyone would just want to try them. But,
that's true.
like, do you actually want to sit down and play them?
I think it would depend on the actual gameplay and the playability. From what I've heard, especially looking at the Angry Video Game Nerds reviews, is that the gameplay is really shoddy. The controls are poor. The hitboxes and the landing areas don't always match up what the graphics are showing. So it might just get to the point where it's really frustrating. I mean, I'm probably not going to torture myself with them. And if I'm dying enough, and if I can't get through a stage, then maybe I'll stop. Maybe I'll
so
go on the next
that's the
game.
thing. That's basically, I'd probably not play them much, just because the reason that we make fun of them for being bad isn't only the cutscenes, it's that
they're bad.
The game is legendarily not fun to play.
Right. It seems that you need to have a lot of patience to play through them.
Yeah.
Right. It's not that it's hard in any sort of like actual difficulty way. It's the artificial difficulty caused by, for example,
just bad level design and
and just like having like
mechanics.
5 different things mapped to a single button and all this kind of thing. Like one example that was sort of a big one from the Angry Video Game Nerds review of it was that like sometimes you'd have like a dark cave, and to light it up, what you have to do is you have to go into your inventory, which you do by like ducking down and pressing like, the A or whatever equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do that, if you press that button, it exits you out the door. So you're in this dark cave, and you cannot light the torch from when you enter into the cave. And so, what do? Oh, well, why don't we walk left? Okay, and you fall through it into a pit and die because there was nothing there which you couldn't have known because the controls made it impossible for you to open the inventory and get the torch.
Because the reason that this is the case is that the CDI console had multiple controllers, and I think the most standard controller only had 2 buttons.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think
But there
it
were
was
other
like an
controllers that had 3
actual
or
remote
more.
control, like for a TV.
Yeah, something like that. Like, there were a bunch of different controllers, but I think that the most basic one only had 2 buttons, so that's why most games were made, you know, to be playable with all controllers. And I feel like that's also a problem that Nintendo has now with the Wii U. There are so many controller options, so that when you make a game for the Wii U, you have to take the most basic control and make it work on that, and so all the other controls that do have more and better options that become kind of superfluous.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, because having 2 buttons is not a unique thing to... Obviously, the original NES had 2 buttons. The new Super Mario Brothers series for the Wii and the Donkey Kong Country Returns series for the Wii both deliberately use a 2-button setup where half of the buttons just don't work to be nostalgic. Like, it's obvious that with 2 buttons, you can have a far better control system.
You can, but keep in mind also that even the NES had a start and select button.
Mm-hmm.
And the CDI didn't. It only had 2 buttons. So one of them had, or like a combination, like ducking down and pressing one button had to be start instead of having a separate start button.
Right, which is it's bad. It's the bad design for the system. Like, because that's the thing we were saying earlier, that this is considered one of the best games on the Philips CDI. Or these games are, because they have much higher production values and much more effort put into them than all of the others. It's just the whole system was train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
the
actually,
controller, the actual system itself, everything.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the games that were made for the CDI were actually more educational titles. So, I mean, the CDI stands for Compact Disc Interactive, so it was like essentially taking CDs and then you could interact with them, and it wasn't maybe primarily designed for video games, but more, you know, maybe you have a quiz and you can move the cursor and choose, you know, multiple choice answers, for example.
Yeah, so it's basically, yeah, so that kind of game that sort of barely, it involves you switching between 2 text options by pressing left or right on the remote. It's just, it wasn't designed for video games, so
for action-based games.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, do you remember those very basic like PC games that you play when you're a kid? Like when you're a little kid and you play, like when you're 6 years old and you play these really, they are kid games, and they're like, answer the questions, and like you click in and it's like, you did it, ding, and you get a little star.
Yep.
Imagine buying a several $100 system for that.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know those games you played on the computer as a kid? Well, the computer was around back then. It was playing those games. The CDI was a worthless system.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like, yeah, if you had maybe if your parents had a computer and they used it mainly for work or whatever, and then you needed a thing like that too, well, instead of getting another computer, you could get, I don't know, computers were probably expensive back then, but if you want to get a very bad version, I mean,
very
I feel
bad
like there were a lot of
version.
consoles, like the 3DO as well, like in the late 90s, that tried to be a mix between a console and a computer.
Right, like the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Troll.
No, but it's true. So, yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, that's why Nintendo's always had a bit of a, you know, they've sort of had a singular focus on video games, whereas most other companies that enter the video game market do not. so Sony and Microsoft both have it as part of like a larger, scheme of things. It's the same with Philips. It's the same with most of the, apart from Nintendo and like, I think Sega was Sega video games only, or was it like a?
Pretty much, yeah.
No, yeah, pretty much. I mean, both Nintendo and Sega. I think, Nintendo, they've gone off and done some other little things on the side, not just video games. And I think Sega's probably made one or two little thingies.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is most of them have video games as a quaint little side project. Like Philips is.
Yeah.
Philips is TVs, isn't it?
Philips make everything. I have a Philips food processor, a Philips iron.
So they're like Sony.
No, I think well, haven't they usually, just in the past year, haven't they pretty much only gone over to like household wares? Haven't they basically stopped making entertainment things altogether, like TVs and stuff?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I can't say I follow Philips. Much
Yeah,
prefer Nintendo.
As video game systems go, Nintendo's made a few more good consoles than Philips has.
Just a few.
Yeah.
Just a few.
So wouldn't it be interesting if Philips decided to re-enter the video games market? I mean, we've got a
I think they
few.
would be dead on arrival. I mean,
It would be like actual good ideas that have promise, like the Ouya have entered the market and spectacularly not done much at all.
Right.
Then you get the Philips CDI 2. It plays CDs, and everyone's like, "Woo,
Maybe it'll be the
yeah,
DVD
we did it,
eye
guys."
or the Blu-ray eye.
Gaming has evolved to the point that we can
Yeah.
use CD-ROMs.
yeah.
Like
I
we did in
think
1995.
that there are very few companies that can re-enter the console race. I think
Of course.
one of the few that actually could would be Sega, because they have so many fanboys from back in the day.
Yeah, no, I think if there's a new console that's coming out, it's not going to be from like Sega. It's going to be from like Google, or
Yeah.
Google.
Yep.
Valve's been entering the market, just sort of
With the Steam machine.
Yeah, but that's I kind of like the Steam machines, because they're
an
not
interesting
really.
concept.
Yeah. They're not really. Oh, this is our very
It's not
restricted
like, this is one
first-party console thing. It's just like, no, this is hardware that are kind of like computers, and you can use them for Steam, and you can mod them, and there are a lot of different models, and you can do a bit whatever you want with them to fit your purpose. So I think I don't know, because most people that have Steam use it on their PCs, but there will probably be a couple people who are like, well, you know what, that would be kind of nice, because now I can get a Steam machine that I like, I can hook it up to my TV, and I can use that to play things like racing game or fighting games that are usually better in front of a TV.
It's not really a traditional like system, because it's got like 15 different companies developing their own versions, all at different price points with different things. The only thing in common is the operating system, which is going to come packed alone as an operating system at some point, if it hasn't already. Give some final thoughts on the start of CDI month?
Yep, I can give some thoughts on what you can expect by the end of CDI month by reading a couple of comments from our fans on the final day of CDI month last year, which were, CDI month was a lot more entertaining than I expected it to be. And you guys are all so awesome. Thank you so much for having the goal to actually put on this CDI month. It has been such a pleasure. So for those of you who are groaning right now and saying, not again, or why don't you just bury these games and forget that they exist? Well, you never know, you might just be entertained.
Exactly. And that's all we're here for. So enjoy CDI month. Hope you had a good time listening to this podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more CDI goodness.
Golly!